Hey, 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 welcome, 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 beautiful souls. I am right on time. It just hit 8:01 and I was having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back. I am Brittany, your manifesting mentor. I'm not a coach, I'm not a guru, but I am a woman who lives this work daily and I help others to do the same so that they can live the life that they truly deserve. Okay? So I'm so excited because you're here tonight because the conversation is going to be powerful. It's about truly understanding why we sometimes feel stuck, stressed, or disconnected from our future selves, and how we can reclaim our energy and shift into our higher timeline. So, tonight we're covering parts 4 and 5 of chapter 2 of Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And if you have not watched those already, which I'm assuming you have because you're here, but if you're not or you haven't, the playlist is available on my channel and it's all in order so you don't miss a beat. But part 4 of chapter 2, it talks about where attention goes, energy flows, and living by the hormones of stress. And then we're going to move into part 5 of chapter 2, which talks about calling your energy back. So I'll be sharing key takeaways, I'll be sharing some reflections personally, and I'll also open up space to answer questions should you have any, and also engage with you in the chat as any comments come in. So let's get started without further ado. Am I saying that right? I don't know. Anyways, summary talking points for part 4, where attention goes, energy flows, and living by the hormones of stress. Dr. Joe Dispenza explains that whatever we place our attention on, we are essentially giving our energy to. And we're doing so willingly, right? It's like just saying, I don't need this energy, so here you go. But the fact of the matter is, you probably have been praying for some things for a while. You probably have been trying to, you know, what Dr. Joe calls go matter to make some things happen. And you probably have been wondering why they're not clicking. And it's because a good portion of that is where you're putting your attention. So Dr. Joe says that most people unknowingly give their energy to memories of the past or to fears about the future. And it keeps them trapped emotionally and energetically. So this is a big part of chapter 2 is making you aware of how you've been existing for a while. Because we all have unconsciously been conditioning ourselves to have a certain signature frequency, right? And unless you understand how you've been existing, what frequency you've been sending out, it's very hard to change those patterns, right? You don't know that you have these emotional addictions. You don't know that that is your signature frequency. And that is the thing that's drawing things onto you. But when you find out, when you learn through things like these teachings of Dr. Joe Dispenza, it helps you feel more empowered and free. At least it has for me. And that's why I'm even doing the series and showing up to help other people navigate through what I find to be extremely eye opening, but at some points of it, it could be complex. And it's not about instantaneous results. So if you are also addicted to instant gratification, this process is going to help you break that addiction because life happens in seasons. And if it took a while for you to get to the signature frequency that you've been emitting, it may take a while to uncondition yourself from that. Okay. So he says that living by the hormones of stress, such as cortisol, adrenaline, etc., it keeps the body in survival mode, or what he calls fight or flight. And so many of us are treating our everyday lives, circumstances, experiences, relationships with others as if we are living in the jungle and running from a lion, tiger, or bear. And I say that because when you are in survival mode, your body is in a state of fight or flight, and cortisol and adrenaline are designed to get you out of danger. It's designed to give you that extra boost of energy, hyper focus your energy to all of your from all of your external extremities so that you can run and get out of danger. The problem is we're in this dysregulated state with our bills, with our financial situations, with our relationships with our spouses, with our children, with our jobs, with circumstances, with our health. And over time, Dr. Joe says this leads to emotional addiction, disease, and energetic depletion. So if you've been feeling like you don't have the energy and you're wondering where it's going, it's probably linked to where your attention has been unconsciously. So if this is resonating with you, definitely drop some fire in the comments section. But the key wisdom takeaway from part 4 is if you live in survival, your body gets conditioned to expect the worst, aka catastrophic thinking. I've been there before. If you've experienced anxiety or depression, that is in essence linked to catastrophic thinking. You are anticipating the worst case scenario. You are expecting the worst case scenario. And it's because, as Dr. Joe explains, you are basing your fears about the future on what you've experienced in the past. And that's causing you to live in a state of fight or flight, anticipating the worst. So, I personally noticed in my own life that when I used to focus on what was missing or what wasn't happening, I was leaking so much energy because I was living in a constant state of anxiousness and I had no clue. Like this was a subconscious thing. I recognized over time, and especially once I got into this work, that I had an emotional pattern that I needed to stop because I did not like how it was making me exist in my body physically and also just what it did to me emotionally. So I recognized that long before I actually knew about this work. But once I learned about this work helped me find a path that could help me free myself. And it takes practice. This is why I always talk about repetition being the key foundation of all learning. You know, when you start this work, like Dr. Joe says, it's like training an untrained puppy. If you have the patience to train a puppy to domesticate it so that it can live indoors or whatever you want it to get used to doing, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be consistent and you're going to have to keep it up, like keep it going. You're going to have some grace for the puppy, right? Or the untrained body in this case. And so it wasn't until I started truly tuning my attention to possibility rather than what I used to experience in the past, because Dr. Joe says also in this chapter that every memory is tied to an emotion. So whenever you're replaying something in your mind, you're doing it in the present moment. And it's tied to an emotion that may not be pleasant in the present moment. Or if you're projecting into the future, thinking catastrophically, you're doing it in the present moment, which means whatever emotions are tied to your catastrophic thoughts are happening in the present moment. And why is that? That is because the body, the subconscious mind, the body does not know the difference between something real and something that is imagined. And so you could be thinking about a memory that happened, but if it's tied to an emotional um, state that creates dysregulation in your body, every time you remember it, you're remembering it now. And so your body's feeling those emotions now, which speaks volumes to whatever signature frequency you're sending out. So it wasn't until I learned about this, tuning my attention into the present moment, that my manifestation sped up and I started to feel more calm and trusting and intuitive within myself. And so to keep, I actually allow people to submit questions ahead of time. So I'm going to get into the questions that people submitted from watching part 4. And the first question is, if my body is addicted to stress, how can I start to break the cycle? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a very good question. As soon as I kill this bug that I see. Anyways, so I would say if you recognize your body's addicted to stress, which is most of us in the Western world, start becoming aware of where your attention is. And what you do is you scan your body and figure out where your emotional state is throughout the day, right? You can use things like mindfulness, like meditation to help you learn how to become present in the moment. And then really ask yourself, what has my attention? And if you don't know what has your attention, ask yourself, how am I feeling and why? And that'll tell you everything you need to know about where you've been putting your attention. So when you catch yourself, you slip into these patterns of stress, if you don't catch yourself. But when you catch yourself, you recognize, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. I need to shift. And you constantly shift your focus to gratitude, to present moment awareness, or a future vision you're excited about. So little small shifts like that help to retrain your body. You're conditioning your body to a new signature frequency instead of it being anchored in the past of anxiety or depression or, just all the feelings that come with anticipating the worst case scenario because of something you've experienced that wasn't pleasant in the past. That was a really good question, actually. Question number 2 is, why does my past keep feeling more real than my dreams for the future? Another great question. And I would say it's because your body memorizes emotional experiences. Dr. Joe says a memory is often tied to an emotional impression. And emotions are chemical reactions that are the output of something that you experience. So if you have an unpleasant memory, it has an unpleasant emotion tied to it. So it feels like you're emotionally anchored to a past event. And your body's going to believe that it is your reality because, again, it doesn't know the difference between something real or imagined. And if you're thinking about it constantly, that's where you're constantly putting your body at, right? Your body's going to believe that's your reality, even if you mentally want to change. So that's why it feels like you're sometimes stuck when you intellectually know I need to change, but it's not quite happening because you're still being triggered. Dr. Joe teaches that you must embody the emotions of your desired future to overwrite that memorized past. And Neville Goddard actually taught this when he talks about revision. Revision is an imaginal act. And so Dr. Joe is trying to get you to do something similar, but he's trying to get it to really be impressed on your subconscious mind through meditation. Why? Because in chapter 2, he also talks about brain waves. He talks about when you slip into brain waves that are much slower than beta, when you slip into the alpha, the theta, the gamma brain waves, your subconscious is now open and receptive to information. It's less analytical, which is what beta is. When we're talking and engaging, or you're watching something and you're engaged in it, your attention is there. You're analyzing, you're thinking. That's beta. When you're in meditative states, you slip into alpha. Your brain waves slow down. Theta, same thing. Gamma, same thing. And in gamma, people have mystical experiences, but it's one of the most potent brainwave frequencies that you can get your brain to so that it can start accepting and surrendering to what you are programming it to. So if you memorize or you play an imaginal act and you do it repetitiously, your body doesn't know that that's not an actual memory. We call it imagination or visualization, but the more you do it, your body's going to start processing it as a memory, and it's going to have some emotions tied to that memory. So imagine what you're now going to be programming yourself to. That's what we're doing. And question number 3 says, can survival mode block my manifestations? Absolutely. It absolutely can. I've experienced that myself. That's when I recognized those patterns that I talked about, that I knew I needed to change. I knew I needed to change it because I wasn't getting the results that I knew I deserved, and I couldn't figure out why. But once again, I became aware and I knew something needed to change, this information came to me. It's like the divine dropped it on my lap. So if you're watching this, consider yourself fortunate because the divine thinks enough of you to bring you a method that so many people have tapped into to implement for themselves. It's not the only way. There are many other teachings out there, but you got to find your way. And if you came here, this avenue is probably likely going to be a part of your way. And so I want to encourage you to know that when you are in survival mode, you're operating from fear and limitation. And that's why things feel constricted or stuck, because you're telling the universe or the quantum field that you're not safe, that you're not abundant. When you live in lack and limitation, you're not safe and you're not abundant. And so creation can only really happen when you move into elevated emotions like love, like gratitude, like freedom, because those things give you what? Relief. It feels like that, right? If you're not feeling like that, and instead you're feeling like tense, that is survival frequencies. That is survival mode, fight or flight. that is very much a frequency that blocks because you're not able to think clearly, you're not able to be yourself fully, you're not able to feel free or creative in survival mode. It's not the time to be creative. It's the time to fight or flight. It's time to fight, be on defense, snap at somebody, or retreat. But it's not time to create when you're in that emotional state. Great questions, guys. This is really gonna hopefully help a lot of people who see this video. So I'm gonna take it to next part, which is part 5, where Dr. Joe Dispenza gets into talking about calling your energy back to you. And the summary talking points basically state that Dr. Joe introduces in part 5 the idea that much of our energy is often scattered in places that it doesn't belong. Past memories, regrets, old relationships, worries, doubts, fears, frustration. And in order to create a new reality, you have to reclaim that energy and reinvest it into the what? The present moment. Why? Because the present moment is the only place where true change happens because it's the only place that you actually have creative power. Once again, if you're living by the past, you're thinking about a memory. You're imagining what happened in the past, but you're doing it now. If you're worried about the future, you're thinking about the things you fear, but you're doing it now. What if instead of doing either of those things, you decided to be right here, right now, in the present moment? If you got a cup of coffee, but you're in the past or the future, you can't even enjoy that cup of coffee. But if you're present, you can take in the smell. You can enjoy how it feels going warm down your throat. You can actually take on the full flavor. You know, you can think about what that flavor is like. You can think about the joy you feel from drinking coffee. You know, you can look around your surroundings and take in things that you might be grateful for. But if your mind is occupied, your attention is occupied with the past that wasn't so pleasant or the future that you fear, you can't be present. You can't be in gratitude. It's virtually impossible. And so the key wisdom to take from part 5, I wrote that healing, manifestation, and transformation require you to consolidate your energy into the now. So I talk a lot on my TikTok about being present and how meditation has really helped me to learn how to pull myself out of the past and out of an unwanted future and to bring my attention and awareness into the present moment and really allow space and room for possibility. Because when you are living in a predictable past or living by emotions of a predictable past, or you're living by the emotions of a fearful projected future, you don't leave room for possibility. You leave room for more of the same. You can literally take your yesterdays and paste them over your tomorrows because it's the known, it's predictable. But what does possibility represent? Possibility represents the infinite. It represents I might not have ever experienced the thing that could happen to me today. And it might be really freaking good. And guess what? I'm open to that. I am open to all the good that the divine has in store for me. And when you come from that energy space of, ooh, isn't it wonderful if this would happen? Wouldn't it be cool if that happened? Like the possibilities are infinite, they're unlimited. You're not restricted, you're creative, you are expansive, you know? And so that's what we want to get ourselves into, that state of being open to the unknown, pulling ourselves out of the familiar past or the predictable future, and lingering in the unknown to allow for something new to unfold and transpire. For example, I noticed when I meditated on pulling my energy back from old regrets, I felt physically lighter, like my future self had more fuel to work with. It's real. You can actually feel it. You know, when you're doing this work, you feel the difference in how you exist moment to moment, day to day. And I think that's why so many people who come across these teachings and in Dr. Joe's community, whether they start and stop meditating, whether they, read the book and don't get into meditation, at some point they all eventually come back to this work because they find themselves in crises. And it's a lot of information out there. It's a lot of wisdom out there, but it's not enough to know. Like Dr. Joe always says, we want to know how, right? How do we apply the wisdom? And I think kudos to him. The man needs to win a Nobel Peace Prize for the formula that he dropped on our heads and called Becoming Supernatural. You are the placebo, breaking the habit of being yourself, and all these workshops that he does, because he never centralizes himself as the master teacher. He makes himself just like anybody who comes into his work. He's no different. He just says, I did this, and this is what I did, and you should try it. Literally, he gives you an invitation to just experiment. And when you start the experiment and you start seeing the results that you get, even if it is the smallest things like how you feel from day to day, or being able to stop a negative emotional spiral dead in its tracks, or being able to shift from a negative thought pattern to something more positive and notice the difference you feel in your body. That's huge, right? That's huge because everything is energy. So you naturally will feel lighter like I did. Um, Life gets a lot lighter. It gets a lot lighter. And that's why I'm so passionate about this work. Enough to be reading chapters on YouTube, doing lives. And I will tell you something in the beginning, these lives, crickets are what you hear. At least that's what I hear, right? A lot of times it's crickets. Not a lot of people show up, if any. But I keep going. And what I find is that I'll go back and look at my video views, and so many more people watched it. So many more people start commenting, or people find me on my other platforms. And I'm like, I didn't even know you knew I was doing this, but hey, you found me. So I'm going to keep going because I don't care if it's 5 years from now, somebody is going to benefit from this work. I benefited from finding other people who did this work and who shared testimonials or who just helped break down insights, because everybody's a different kind of learner. And I know that as a former educator. So I know that some people will resonate with the way that I have insights and others won't. But the people who will find me will be those who do. So I'm going to keep showing up. But aside from that, let's get into these questions. Questions from part 5. The first question says, how do I know if my energy is stuck in the past? Ooh, good question. Like what I did, I felt drained. I felt like I wasn't being my best self. You feel stuck. You feel triggered by memories that no longer serve you, by people, by circumstances, and you just become exhausted with it. That's how you know you're stuck in the past. If you find yourself replaying old conversations, replaying old scenarios that didn't go the way you wanted them to, feeling like old wounds keep coming up, obsessing over what could have been, right? It's a sign that your energy is still entangled with the past. So I hope that helps because that's exactly what happened with me. Next question. What is a simple way to start calling my energy back? Meditation. Even if it's 5 minutes, meditation. Or, how about this? Even in meditation, if it's 5 minutes, start with visualization in a meditative state. So close your eyes, imagine cords of energy tied to old memories, fears, or people, and gently imagine pulling those cords back to yourself, right? Back into your heart space. Thank the experiences for showing up to teach you whatever lessons they came to teach, and then reclaim that energy for your new life. Call all your energy back. And as a matter of fact, at the end of this live, I'm going to do a quick little exercise that touches on that. So stay tuned. Question number 3. Why is the present moment so powerful for manifestation? Great question. I think for me, the obvious thing is because you can't go back in the past and the future hasn't happened yet. So that's how I like to think about it. The present is all you really have. The next moment is not guaranteed. If we're guaranteed anything in this experience, is that when we're born, we're no longer going to be here at some point. And none of us know that moment. So all you really have is the present moment. And so because the quantum field also responds to your state of being, not what you want or not your intentions alone, when you're fully present, You collapse the past and the future into a single point of power. And it's the space where you can truly become the version of you who already has the life you desire. Right? We always talk about, Neville says to live in the end. Well, when do you live in the end? You live in the end now. He's not saying keep replaying the past. As a matter of fact, he's telling you to revise it so that that past that you had that wasn't so great, you can revise it to something that's much more pleasant and let that be your now. Live in it now, right? Or revise something that happened in the past and then give yourself a taste of fulfillment, your ideal case scenario, but do it in a way that you can feel into it right now. It's the only it's the only space or place or state of being that you can actually embody, right? Embodiment is a present thing. It's what you're doing right now. And so ask yourself, who am I being? That always guides me throughout my day. Who am I being with this person? Who am I being with this job? Who am I being with this circumstances? Who am I being moment to moment? And if I'm not being my ideal self, I must be being the old version of me, the one that I practice being. And if parts of that no longer serve me, I got to do something about it. Thankfully, I have a method. It's definitely tried and true. Sorry for the background noise, but it's proven because ordinary people are doing the same thing, and they're just being consistent. They're no more special. They're no more intelligent. They're no more privileged or blessed. We're all leading at the same time by being the masters of ourselves, the masters of our emotional state, the masters of our environment internally, right? Because that influences external environment. But we're all leading at the same time. And so hopefully that helps you understand why this present moment is so powerful for manifestation because all you have is what you're doing right now. And if you're here, you're doing the right thing in my eyes. I think I had another backup question. Did I say backup question? Another question. I didn't know if we would have time, so I had a backup question for what I would share. This person said, "Is it possible to be addicted to familiar suffering without realizing it?" Ooh, yeah. I think most of us. When I became conscious of my pattern, I had been doing it for a very long time. I had been doing it. My first recollection of the pattern that I was working towards shedding, my first recollection was as a teen in fifth grade. I'll say that. That pattern started when I was in fifth grade. It started in fifth grade because I had a very common experience, but I processed it in a traumatic way. And from that point on, I can think back to when I would exhibit that pattern in multiple circumstances. And so as an adult, fast forward a couple years ago, when I finally said, hey, this pattern got to go because it's getting in the way, that's when I started to make a conscious shift. But most of us live unconsciously. They say the most powerful thing is to know thyself. Jay-Z said it best, to be honest. You can't heal what you never reveal. He said that. And it's true. Like, if you don't know how you're existing, then you don't know how you need to change in order to shift from that. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so I would say that is very common. And when the body is conditioned to emotions like sadness, anger, or fear, they can feel normal, even though they are painful, because it's a pattern, it's a conditioning. A lot of times we fight change because it's unfamiliar. Some people would rather stay addicted, and not consciously, but they would rather stay addicted to something that's terrible for them because it's familiar to their nervous system, right? And this is why you can get people who could end up or find themselves, and it could happen to anybody, but who could find themselves in abusive relationships. They might know it's toxic, they might know it's no good, but tell that to their nervous system that's addicted to it. On the surface, it's easy to judge when people are in those circumstances, but understanding everything that Dr. Joe is teaching, it's so easy to identify and have empathy for anybody who's struggling with patterns because we all have emotional addictions. You may not have known you had an emotional addiction, but you do. It's the thing that you turn to that's familiar. How have you processed? How have you learned how to cope with tough things, with things that are uncomfortable? If you take it back to those questions, you might start to recognize your own emotional pattern, AKA addiction. And so it takes awareness to realize it. Just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's safe or that it's actually true. So healing means stepping into unfamiliar emotional territory, like joy, like freedom, like peace. And it took time for you to have those emotional addictions. So just know it may take some time to break the emotional addictions and to teach your body something new, something that's more beneficial, that's helpful. But guess what? It can be scary because it's what? Unfamiliar. So, why does it feel uncomfortable to leave survival mode at first? Exactly what I just said, because your nervous system and subconscious mind are wired for what's predictable. It's been conditioned. Dr. Joe says by the time you're 35, you're pretty much hardwired into a set personality. Think about that. So, when you move towards peace or abundance or trust, your body is like, wait a second, I don't know what this is. And so initially it sees it as something that's unsafe simply because it's unfamiliar. It's new. So consistency, compassion, grace, these are the things you're going to have for yourself to make the unfamiliar more familiar, right? Repetition is how we get there. Repetition is how we learned. It's how we got conditioned, right? Repetition is also the gateway to getting unconditioned, to unlearning and relearning. All right. And then last question, what's one thing I can do tomorrow morning? Ooh, to stay in the present moment. Ooh, just being more aware. Start the day with a conscious breath work or a meditation, even 2 to 3 minutes of focusing only on your breath and your different energy centers, what we like to call a body scan. That can send a signal to your body that you're actually safe, right? Like if you've been conditioned into anxiousness, it's because you have catastrophic thinking. You're thinking the worst. You're sending signals to your mind and your body that whatever is ahead is not going to be safe, or whatever happened in the past didn't make me feel safe. So if you can do something, even if it is 2 to 3 minutes in the morning, top of the day, do breath work, do a body scan, and give your body the signal that it's safe. Tell yourself, I'm present, I'm powerful, and that'll create a foundation for the rest of your day, literally. If any of this resonates, drop a heart in the comment section. But I do want to do a mini visualization before I do end this. I also wanted to share a story because I did say in my last video, when I was recording part 5 of Becoming Supernatural, I had so many technical issues that came up. Um, And this is a testament to the lesson that chapter 2 is here to teach. So I couldn't figure out why I had to keep stopping and re recording part 5 of Becoming Supernatural. And it wasn't until after my third attempt, I'm telling you, I got halfway through. And if you saw part 5, it's almost 30 minutes long. So I'm talking about 15 minutes strong. Of I was like halfway there. I had to keep recording, and what I realized later in that day is if I paid attention to how my day went, or actually the week prior, I had been focused on some things that were very familiar, some stories that I had about people in my life that are very familiar, storylines that aren't so pleasant. So that had my attention. And then also, I had some unpleasant thoughts about some emails that I received um, just at my work, right? And so it really made me conscious in the moment. Oh crap, I had to read that section all those times because that was the divine's loving way, graceful way of getting me to understand, baby girl, you're reading this book and it's talking about awareness and attention, and it's talking about the present moment, and you aren't being present. I was not being present the week prior in that particular day that I was trying to read this part of chapter 2. And so it was a valuable lesson that all my power is literally in the present moment. I had to tell myself, okay, I'm going to pay those things dust. Because if I keep telling those stories and replaying that in my head, I am robbing myself of the energy that I need to create what it is that I'm setting out to do. And all I have is the present moment. And I realized that I was taking myself there emotionally every single time. So, as promised, I'm going to take a moment right now to like what I needed to do is call our energy back. I'm going to take a moment to call our energy back. And this will take about maybe 2 minutes. So, if you have a brief moment, I want us to gently close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or you can feel safe enough to do so, or soften your gaze if you feel safe enough to do that. I want you to take a deep breath in, deep breath out. And now I want you to imagine that scattered pieces of your energy, such as worries, regrets, unfinished conversations, old memories, are floating all around you like little sparks. And I want you to see them glowing in the distance and feel yourself gently reaching out and gathering them back into your heart. No force, no struggle, just gentle reclaiming. And every breath you take pulls your energy back home into this moment, into your power, into your truth. And now silently repeat after me in your mind. I call all of my power back to me. I am whole. I am here. I am free. And I want you to take another deep breath in. And as you exhale, feel yourself fully anchored into the present moment. And when you're ready, open your eyes. I hope you found that helpful. Feel free to use that as often as it's beneficial. And as we wrap up tonight, just remember that your attention is your energy. Your energy is your creation power, and you need it for your creations. And whatever or whenever you direct it, you're building your next reality. So if you take just one thing away from tonight, let it be this: the more you honor the present moment and the more you call your energy back to you, the faster you become the living embodiment of your dreams. So thank you so much for sharing this space with me. If this resonated with you, tap that like, follow, subscribe, share it with someone else who is ready to reclaim their present moment, their dreams, their desires. And I'll see you next week as we continue growing through Becoming Supernatural, Chapter 3. Until next time, I don't know who needs to hear this, but you got this.